Sonic Boom, 3 men and my baby. It sounds like this will just be another boring cliche episode where it's just about the running gag over and over. The sexist cliche that men can't take care of babies. And it's very baffling that it would be promoted so much in a children's show. Knuckles drives to a cactus on an RV buggy, bragging about being reckless as cool music plays. But sadly, once again, the show interrupts itself in being cool. The worst kind of predictable joke it's got. Because Knuckles burns himself on the pizza he was cooking, and loses control of the vehicle. Why couldn't it just keep the cool parts cool? So he crashes and somehow wasn't injured. Must have had rings. Tails lampshades that someone could have gotten hurt, and the owner of the baby gets hurt because a tree falls on her, which somehow doesn't kill her. Tails lampshades that pizza ovens shouldn't be allowed to distract people in cars. That's just what I was thinking. The mother's voice is awful and her acting is horrible. Sonic lampshades that she's a bad mother by saying that now she's concerned about the baby's safety. See, that's more worthy of the town turning on him. Somehow he thinks it's a good idea to offer to take care of her baby, and so it cries, annoying us with an awful sound before Knuckles gives it baby food. So, did they shut down the daycare center that was just a cage? I mean, we saw the heroes having a car wash to raise money for a new daycare center. Where did that go? I guess she's just too cheap to pay for daycare services, and doesn't have any friends, so she can't ask anybody to look after a baby. I guess apparently Dave was supposed to be her best friend, but she wouldn't trust him. At least they cared enough to explain why they're looking after the baby, instead of her just randomly asking them to look after the baby, because I wouldn't have put that past the show. Amy refuses to take care of the baby, being actually in character for once instead of being used as the girl, but it still makes her look irritating instead of a good friend. Not to mention that, while it is in character for normal Amy, by this point, Sonic Boom Amy's character has been firmly established to be like as girly as physically possible, so it's very bizarre that now of all times she refuses to take care of a baby. Like, I think recently she's been trying to be all feminist, but that flies in the face of her teacher sensitivity seminar, and painting, and having a centerpiece making obsession, and writing a romance novel. What did they want with this character? It would make more sense if Amy was on a vacation. It makes sense that Sonic and his friends would wear astronaut suits when changing his diaper to avoid smelling it, but it looks so stupid. It's not as horribly stupid as them trying to sing and dance to the baby though, which I immediately skipped. What is the show's obsession with doing this kind of thing? Wouldn't they have gotten a horrible reception the first time and been aware enough of their fans to know to stop it? I guess the fans didn't have good taste. They thought this shouldn't be stopped. They try to get the baby to sleep, and then some badniks threaten their house. So Knuckles holds the baby while they fight badniks instead of just keeping the baby in the house where it's safe, with Sonic kicking at one point. And he jumps on the Eggmobile and says cathartically that it took hours to get the baby to sleep, and now he's gonna put him down. But he doesn't kill him because that makes sense. Eggman lampshades that this action scene is something he should be thankful for because it's thrilling, sarcastically calling the episode Thrilling Baby Escapades. So then why did the writer write this episode if he knew it'd be a bad idea? Why would you intentionally submit a boring Sonic episode? Knuckles punches to create a shockwave, and the baby messes things up, pressing buttons on the Eggmobile, which ruins Eggman's plan. Knuckles is smart enough to wear a baby pouch. Some girls like Zoe think it's sweet. Why wasn't Tails the one wearing the baby pouch? That would actually be a lot more character for him. And they try to make the boringness exciting with music that pretends we're having fun. Knuckles swings the baby so much that he goes in a circle and falls into Sonic's hands. I think this plot was much more interesting in Sonic Underground, where the baby was a robot to trick them. Go figure. They try to take advantage of the sci-fi-ness of Sonic, and it's more enjoyable. After worthless, forgettable padding, where you could have any characters in the situation, they lose the baby somehow, and the heroes realistically panic over it. I'm glad this is being taken seriously. Sonic runs around the foggy canyon in a blur, being burned afterwards, and yet he won't be out of commission for the rest of the episode. So why should we care about any of the action scenes if the heroes are usually invincible? Some coconuts falls on Knuckles' head from a tree, speaking of invincible, and Sonic decides to check out the most dangerous place of all, which is somehow the restaurant. Sonic inexplicably celebrated because the baby wasn't here either. The heroes waste time being sad, and Knuckles says it's Sonic's fault for not installing enough safety measures. I'm glad it was Sonic's fault, not Knuckles'. I immediately predicted that the Lady Walrus got her baby back when Tails planned on telling the woman what happened. Of course he's right there. It'd be dark otherwise. You know, if this episode was of a proper length, then the baby wouldn't be right there for the sake of rushing the ending. And instead, Lady Walrus would join in on trying to find her baby. Tails has to catch him when he falls off the roof. It's really not in character for Knuckles to be such a crybaby. The real Knuckles would have to be having a nervous breakdown to cry this much in one episode. Probably from his friends treating him like an idiot all the time. Why use Knuckles for this role? I'd much rather have Tails being the one crying too much. This boring, forgettable episode was about the heroes taking care of a baby that they were somehow trusted with when their recklessness put the mother in the hospital. It's just them doing generic stuff to take care of a baby, with the exception of a really cringeworthy dance number that they wouldn't have done. At least it was commendable that the writers showed restraint by not having the token female character take care of the baby, and instead Amy was in character and smart by opting out. But, well, first of all, I think I would have preferred to see Amy take care of the baby. It would show a nice motherly side to her, reminding us that she's supposed to be sweet and not a bitch. It would be a lot more better than the generic comedy cliche of men being clumsy taking care of a baby. Also, where's Styx in this episode? She could have made this a lot more interesting by showing how someone as paranoid as her would be as a mother, and that'd make it a completely different plot. In fact, I think I know why she was omitted. Because if she wasn't, the baby never would have gotten lost, and we'd have all that interesting stuff cut out of the story. Logically, if Styx was with them, she'd have made sure to put safety locks on everything, and the baby would have never been in danger. You'd think someone as paranoid as her would have insisted on taking care of the baby the minute she heard about the situation from Amy, her best friend. Because paranoid means worrywart, so she'd be worrying the whole time. No way she'd trust Knuckles with a baby. She'd be having nightmares. The only explanation I can think of is that she was sick. I guess she ate some rotten fruit in her fridge because it was there so long that she mistook it for a brownie. Because otherwise, there's no way she wouldn't help. And if her friends seriously refused to let her help because they trust her that little, they're not real friends. Being conspiracy theorist doesn't mean she couldn't take care of a baby. Being paranoid means she'd be trying to do the best job she could, and it would have never gotten loose. I really don't know how it got loose, let alone how it got back home. Well, on the bright side, I love that the baby pressed a bunch of buttons in the Eggmobile, so even the baby managed to be useful in the action scene. Reminds me of AOSDH. But this was a lot of padding. What's the point of doing the story if you just show how these characters would generically take care of and react to a baby? Their reactions could have been in any franchise. But it would have been a lot more boring if we didn't get to see the heroes go to dangerous places to look for the baby. So it probably wouldn't have been worth Styx being there and preventing all that from happening. At the end of the day, she just acted like a really overprotective mother, which probably wouldn't have enough story materials to last 11 minutes. I guess it wouldn't be considered comedic enough compared to a bunch of guys bumbling around over a baby. You know, I don't see why they have to be guys to wear spacesuits just because they don't want to smell the baby's diaper when changing it. Seems appealing to me. And Styx being paranoid over the baby wouldn't be nearly as comedic, I guess. But it'd be more interesting than this generic clichéness. This wasn't funny at all. Sonic Underground did this way better because it was a robot baby meant to trick the heroes into leading Eggman to a safe haven. And AOSCH did it better too, because it was way more exciting to have the babies get kidnapped, just to foil Eggman's plan by being surprisingly competent against the bad guys. And as annoying as the babies were, at least it was interesting to see them be the antagonists because they bothered Sonic. They even gave him slapstick and broke plates. This was just a normal baby with no twist, so it wasn't nearly as creative when it just played it straight. Where have all the Sonics gone? We started out with Eggman delivering Mombot some chocolates. So why is she being annoying to him? Like, again, he'd make her a good mother. She's always had the plot hole around her. Why would he build a Mombot just to make her mistreat him? The Mombot is bossy to him. She says that his so-called brother is a robot shapeshifter built by him from alternate dimension, who sadly has a stupid surfer voice. It's a good thing that they're pointlessly reminding us of this, because when I first watched this episode, I didn't know who either of these characters were. Although I guess Mombot is meeting Steve for the first time. What's the point of him shape-shifting all those different times? Why do they have to argue and slap fight? Sonic and Knuckles randomly start racing in race cars, just for Sonic and his car to disappear into another dimension. Just like that. Wow, that's a contrived episode. This is like Pendra's first issue of Archie, and at least in Archie, it was very obvious how much chaos energy the planet had, so it made sense that all that energy would cause portals to different universes to show up at some point. Here, the world is so mundane, and all of a sudden, oh, other dimensions. Eggman's so-called brother says that he caused that to happen. Eggman actually remembers the stupid rule established last time he had another parallel universe. And then it turns out that Sonic was sent to a dimension where there is no counterpart to him anymore. This is an intriguing episode. Even if the race cars thing is stupid, because how rich are they to afford doing that stuff casually? I doubt the mayor has the money to give him that when he closed down the rec center. Then we see Sonic look at Knuckles from another dimension making a video about being in great shape or something. And somehow, Amy immediately realizes it's not really Sonic because he flirts with her. Sonic meets up with the dictator Eggman after Rosie's a jerk to him. Yeah, I'm just gonna call her Rosie. Sonic says he'll never kneel to him, and he has yolk for brains. But then he gets handcuffed out of nowhere and dragged away by a cop. Well, I don't blame him for being caught by surprise. Dave says that Eggman's face is carved in steel, and he owns lead mittens. He says he forgot to give him extra pickles, which is why he's in prison with them. And it's lampshaded that Medburger is a horrible name for a restaurant. Rosie breaks Sonic out of jail, and surprisingly, it's actually Styx that's the leader of her rebellion. I wasn't expecting that. And alternate Styx has an eye patch, which would look much better if it was black color like you'd expect. I'm even imagining it as being black when I'm reading this out, but no. Rosie says that Knuckles is just a goofball from the TV commercials. I love the dark atmosphere with the Resistance being at night around a campfire. It reminds me of what the show should have been. Then when Steve gets laughed at for asking for a salad as Sonic, which reveals himself as Steve right away, alternate Knuckles laughs at the idea of overthrowing Eggman, and says arrogantly that Sonic is coming to him because all of them are wimpy, saying that he'd only help him if Sonic beat him in a race. Sonic instantly wins the race, which already convinces the selfish version of Knuckles to help. Styx and the others use grappling hooks to get to the roof, and Miles reveals that he's working for Eggman as his sidekick, calling Eggman the Great Lord. I wish he had a different design. I mean, this is a brilliant idea, but it's common sense to have a different design for him to fully take advantage of this. It's distracting that they just have lazy budget meta logic take over. Sonic says that Tails' favorite color is orange, and one of his favorite shows is a comedy chimp show, I guess to prove that he's friends with him in another dimension. What kind of coincidence would it be for all of that to actually be true for the other Tails? It's fascinating that finally we see an evil Tails be Eggman's sidekick, but we don't see him actually do anything other than stand near an invention. It could be a robot. It's cool that there's cool music when the heroes are fighting badniks, but it's just them beating them all in one hit really generically, so who cares? Eggman says that he doesn't care about his one lab assistant, rather than having a genuine touching bond with him and seeing him as a son. So he has no problem sending a missile his way, which causes Sonic to save him and get his trust and friendship. Which makes sense because he's got the same DNA as Tails, and was obviously lied to and manipulated by Eggman into thinking he did care about him, only to be proven wrong. How did this take so long? This would be the best possible way to handle an evil Tails ever, if we actually saw him working for Eggman and doing stuff for more than 1 second. And he had a different outfit. Why is he wearing goggles when he doesn't have a plane? All the heroes jump into the Eggmobile and send Eggman Nega away. and Sonic selfishly abandons this world, just assuming that Lord Eggman's days are numbered, when they probably needed his help just to get that far. And with my experience with Sadie M, I know that his days aren't nearly as numbered as he'd think. That world needs some way more. So Sonic very conveniently is able to return home through a portal, and the Mombot says that she's still proud of Eggman for working together with Steve. Why doesn't he just take over the world by building a machine to fly to the president and shapeshifting as him and replacing him? While I do wish this kind of idea could be more than one episode, this was a fantastic episode. The overall tone was perfect. I loved the idea of us seeing a Tyrant Eggman and Sonic Boom, since I heard about it before watching the episode. And I especially love that he's wearing black, like Eggman Nega. I'm glad to say that you wouldn't be better off not watching the show anymore before this point. This is a genuine action episode, where the writers really put effort into being interesting and engaging. Sure, the concept of Steve is, if this is their first experience with him. I hate that they don't explain why he wasn't in all the previous episodes after his debut one. Like, it's not like he was on that same cruise with Mombot. It kind of feels realistic that nobody fell for his Sonic impersonations because people know how Sonic would be. And fortunately, people already know there's a shapeshifter. So everyone figures out it's Steve every time. It's much less frustrating than in Fleetway. The reason I was so confused when I first watched this episode was that I missed Steve's first episode because the episode wasn't labeled with a number correctly. Like, I'm sure that Eggman's brother was like one of those episodes that was called Season 2 episode whatever. It just feels so convenient that everyone knows there's a shapeshifter already, when it's not like Steve personally introduced himself to everyone in the town, but at least it makes logical sense to happen the way it does. The whole episode does. It was impressive of Steve to be able to send Sonic to another dimension. I don't know how he knew which exact one to send him to though. It'd take an eternity of searching for him to find the one that doesn't have a Sonic in it. But apparently he got lucky enough that that was the first one he found. Also, how is there only one? I guess he's just assuming that, because realistically there'd be tons of universes where Sonic's parents happen to get together with different people. And that's just one of multiple examples. That applies to anyone. It's interesting to see that the other Knuckles does TV commercials instead of fighting Eggman, implying that without a Sonic, he never would have met the others and become their friend and be roped into being a hero and realize it's a good thing. Instead, he's doing commercials about how to be fit, which fits him. It's interesting that he outright laughs at the idea of overthrowing Eggman. It suits Boom Knuckles really well, just like how he makes fun of the heroes for not being muscular like him. It's lucky of Sonic to easily convince him to be a freedom fighter just by beating him in a race though. When I first saw Sonic get sent to that dimension, I assumed the other Knuckles was outright on Eggman's side, that he was working for him as a muscle, because he was in a commercial, so I thought he was addressing the public on his behalf. But no, that'd be too interesting. So instead of him fighting Sonic, he's just another one of the heroes boringly fighting badniks, just like they always do. Thank God the action scene had cool music to at least try to create the atmosphere, but that was the slowest generic badnik fighting ever. You'd think that a serious tyrant version of Eggman would have different looking badniks, not to mention much more threatening ones. This is the laziest recycling of models ever. That's unacceptable. I mean, really? This episode has so much effort put into it, and stuff like this really stands out to contrast it. It's not that much effort to reuse models of Eggman and Sonic's friends. There's no excuse whatsoever for making only other sticks look different. Also, they missed an opportunity by not naming the tyrant Dr. Robotnik. This is an American continuity. There's no excuse for not translating things the international way. Sega Japan shouldn't be having its midsole over this. It's not Japanese, so why would you name him something as stupid as Eggman, and not call the planet Mobius? It's just forcing people to keep being too uneducated to know that the world is called Mobius and not Sonic's world. I was really proud of the show for the way it portrayed the evil Tails that someone manipulated into working for Eggman, who naturally turns on him when Sonic has to save him from his missile. Even if it was just an idiot pull for Eggman for deciding to do something so stupid, reckless, and detrimental just to have a chance to shoot a missile. Even though this was a Tails who was on the side of an evil tyrant, the writers still had the good sense to think, you know, this is still an alternate Tails. So realistically, he'd be just as grateful as Tails would if Sonic saved his life. Everything about Tails as we know him is a sweet kid. So it's very hard to believe that he'd be a villain anywhere. And the only way Eggman would be able to get him on his side is by tricking him. So if he proves he doesn't care about him, he'd have no reason to stay on his side. Then you look at Archie Evil Tales, he's just portrayed as one-dimensionally evil, and looks like a horribly lazy cliche by comparison. When we could have at least been told he was bullied and abused and being the way he is. We could have been told here that the reason this Tails joined Eggman was because he's constantly bullied for having two tails. Naturally, without Sonic around to defend him. So Eggman got him on his side by not bullying him for it and pretending he was sympathetic to him. We could have been shown that, and that would have been interesting. It's common sense to write that. Why wouldn't you give him that backstory? Better yet, we should have been shown a lot more of Miles working for Eggman, instead of him just standing there on the roof for some reason. Doing something completely vague with some invention. Not even in the lab, the roof. I don't even remember what that invention was. That's how insignificant it was. We didn't see him fight Sonic with a ray gun. We didn't see him fight him at all. So what's the point of having him on an opposite side as Sonic then? And it sure is convenient that Rosie's hammer was strong enough to break down the prison while Sonic was near, just so she could save him super easily. It'd be fine if we were told that she has super strength, but that can't be it because that's supposed to be Knuckles' trait to contribute. Otherwise, why doesn't she pick him up and throw him around? The writer couldn't think of a more natural way for her to break him out of prison and introduce him to Styx when they don't have a genius engineer on their side. Sonic getting into a spin dash would make way more sense as a way for him to escape the cops. He should have just not been put in prison at all then, if they couldn't explain him escaping at will. Just because he's being dragged away and handcuffed doesn't mean he can't curl up into a ball and spin dash. And it provides some slapstick by showing us how the cops would be whirled around by it. The story wasn't perfect. It was rushed. Because it insisted on trapping such an awesome, epic group of ideas to one episode that's way too good for Sonic Boom, some things were left undercooked. I was excited to learn about how exactly a world run by Boom Eggman would be like. All I learned was that he put Dave in prison for getting his order wrong at a burger stand. And, the cops arrested for rebellion, of course. And, I can't remember anything else. Oh right, he has lead mittens, which obviously would slowly poison him to death. And he carved a sculpture of his face. Yeah, like that's new for Eggman. Anything else? He doesn't have roboticization, despite the obvious Sad M reference with this whole plot. So what's left? What's the point of him using badniks so much in the show if they're not real badniks because they don't have animals trapped inside them? That's dumb. That's tone deaf. At that point, just using hollow imagery of animal robots without actually taking advantage of one of the core concepts of the franchise since it started. One of the things that made it unique, even if it makes no sense that an animal could power a robot, or even be forced into piloting it. So at least it makes more sense, but still, there's a reason his robots were shaped like animals in the first place. Because it made more sense that animals would know how to pilot robots if the robots were shaped like animals in the first place. Here, they're only shaped like animals because familiar Sonic imagery. It would make more sense for Eggman to just use bipedal robots at that point. If Eggman was putting people in badniks all the time, like in Fleetway, that'd give him something evil to do, make him a threat most of the time, that's not causing pointless collateral damage and pointlessly fighting Sonic. That'd be like the games and make him a proper threat. What's the point of showing a Boom Eggman that's a tyrant just to barely show what that's like and just give us the obvious no shit revelations? Anyone could write this. A lot of this stuff could have been developed on more, but instead our time was wasted on failed attempts at impersonating Sonic. We could have had that subplot be in a different episode. And it's a shame that we don't see the aftermath of Sonic abandoning a dimension that needs him. Like Miles feeling guilty about all the trouble he caused and reflecting on it, and his new friends hugging him and forgiving him. That'd be especially heartwarming to see after all he did. It's like, this would make a much more interesting show than the show they come back to. Bottom line is, this episode is fantastic and ridiculously good for the show. We're lucky we even have this, because this is the kind of thing the show should always do. This just shows how little the show lives up to its true potential, by being the complete opposite of what it should be when you look at so many other parts of the franchise that have flourished by not being like Sonic Boom. This is why I'm not wrong when I complain about the show being a bad comedy, because this is what it could be if it was actually trying. And it could be so much better than that. This is what it's meant to be. This is the show's true potential, even if it could still be even better. Imagine how awesome that would be. The show could be so much better if it appealed to the right kind of audience, but instead it thinks that the only thing it's meant to be is a shitty attempt at comedy that's embarrassingly ridiculous at worst, and dull and boring at best. We shouldn't be settling for less. This plot is rushed and underdeveloped, and even that is impressing me because it's so much better than the other episodes. If the show's appealing to only the people who want it to suck, it's not being the way it's meant to be. There's a reason this show is just a cult classic and not anything more. I'm so glad I read that on the TV Tropes page. I knew this episode would be fantastic even from the title card. It's just a shame they didn't do nearly enough to make the alternate versions of the characters different, because it makes them redundant when they look exactly the same a second time. You'd think they would have learned their lesson from the inevitable fan reception.